All right, and moving into task 2, we're going to start with a refresher of our site suitability map. Yeah, so just a refresher, our site, no suitable area in West Texas is around the Fort Stockton, Midland, Odessa area because of several categories: population density, distance to interstates, position over aquifers, and position to existing spaceports. We chose Fort Stockton as the most suitable area for our evacuation site. And then looking closer at Fort Stockton, the suitable slopes, most of the area on Fort Stockton is flat enough that you don't have to do a whole lot of work to start building on it. There are a few areas where the slopes get a little more extreme that you might want to avoid, but nothing crazy, nothing greater than like 8 or 10%. So it might be a little more work, but nothing crazy. And Fort Stockton, we also want to look at when we're replacing things, the median income. It's pretty much the same. The west half of town is in block like census tract block like 3 or something like that, and it's got an average income of about $50,000, with the surrounding areas being between $40,000 and $50,000, and then the east half of town being closer somewhere between $25,000 and $40,000. So you make sure we wanted to place our site elements in equitable places to make sure everyone's getting equal treatment. And also, we wanted to look at some of the spaces we're putting are further outside of town, so I want to make sure we weren't placing them like the launch pads and pre-existing farmlands. So I looked at lands that were prepared for irrigation, and there's nothing within 10 or 15 miles that's like really hard for irrigation.
So some of our prototypes Shelby already went over, but specifically for Fort Stockton, we're focusing on evacuation launch sites, our woven train intersection, and retrofitting interstates for high-speed rails. And so here is our site map of what Fort Stockton would look like. It's basically a transit center for people going from San Antonio to El Paso and from Odessa to Big Bend National Park. And it also works as a job center for this space station that we're implementing in Fort Stockton. So the high-speed rails will be going from these large towns through Fort Stockton, and you can see like from our prototypes that the woven intersection and the retrofitting and in the top corner are launch pad sites, which are protected by mountain barriers and hydrological protection. Fort Stockton is powered through wind farm, solar farm, and then biofuel production, as well as our naturalized corridors for butterfly migration and stormwater management, and then the interconnecting train that surrounds Fort Stockton.
So here, this is a closer look at some of the prototypes in greater detail. Starting on the bottom, we have just the whole city section. It's been exaggerated vertically 5 times because the section I took was fairly flat, but there is still some change. So we have the launch pads outside of town, with the train station being the intermediate point where you can travel between the launch pads and town. And then surrounding the city, we have these woven parks with the intercity magnet raised trains, and then of course the city itself. And then on the top right is just a closer look at the woven intersection with the rail running underneath, the parks surrounding it, and the intercity magnet train running above it. And then of course just the train station is just a pretty standard train station for high volume of people. This is a closer look at the high-speed rail retrofit of the interstate. It's in a location where there's no concern for monarch butterfly flyover, so we don't have to worry about covering it or protecting it anyway. So it can be up above the ground. So that we chose to go above ground, raise it, so because we didn't have to move the existing lanes. That way the buffer was good enough, so if something catastrophic were to happen, most of the people on the interstates would be protected from any damage. And this is one of the launch pad views. I studied Cape Canaveral to see what they were set up like there. And this is pretty standard for a space shuttle launch. And I figured that the rocket to be launched would be similar to a space shuttle because those are the only passenger vehicles we sent into space.
So here's our Fort Stockton phasing plan, going over those phases for 2025, 2050, and 2100. And then going into retrofitting West Texas on the next slide. We'll be converting those existing highway lanes into high-speed rails, and then all of the automobile lanes into energy-efficient railways, and then from there, air and space evacuation. And so then Our next prototype is our woven intersection proposed prototype and how it affects time. And we'll be decreasing travel time through these woven intersections so that there's no need for like stops. So this will improve evacuation rates. And then our parks will be implementing different strategies depending on the phase to improve health and recreation. And then in phase 2, carbon pollination. And then in phase 3, water retention. And so then overall, our performance evaluation will retrofitting will lower carbon emissions. Woven intersections will decrease travel time and also decrease pedestrian accidents. Our green corridor parts will hold 172 acre feet of stormwater retention. Our rocket launch site should have 500 people per rocket, 7 rockets in Fort Stockton, and they are able to be relaunched every 30 minutes. So 10,500 evacuees in an hour and a half can leave Fort Stockton. And overall, our train station should hold 44,000 commuters from San Antonio to El Paso every day and 20,000 commuters from Odessa to Big Bend National Park every day. And those numbers are based on the current commuters from Houston to Dallas every day.